So this is our third year hosting Winter Wednesdays, which is a partnership between South Hero Land Trust and the Worthen Library. This year, we are hosting talks on local ecology, Vermont history, climate change responses, and of course, Lake Champlain. To learn more about other upcoming events in the series, check out South Hero Land Trust events page through the link in the chat. And we'd also like to thank donors, volunteers, and supporters of both organizations for making these events possible. And there's links to donate to both of us in the chat now as well. I'd like to give a shout out to the Lake Champlain Basin program, which does vital work on our lake. And I'll invite the Education and Outreach Coordinator, Colleen Hickey, to share a few words about that now.
Great, thanks Eileen, thanks Guy. It's great that you have Jordan and Dwayne on tonight. Jordan was really a stellar grant recipient from the Great Basin program. He and Dwayne received a small grant for education and outreach. And Jordan, you don't know this, but two of our steering committee members are also on tonight. Pierre Leduc is one, as well as Mark Nod. So I might have missed others, but you're getting a great showing. So they were also responsible for the vote for yes for yours and Dwayne's program. The Basin program is located here in Grand Isle. We work with New York, Vermont, and Quebec on lake management issues. We just had a very long day together, but all three jurisdictions have a pretty equal say in our management plan and the production of the State of the Lake report as well. So thank you very much for letting us do an intro. Jordan and Dwayne, I'm really excited to see your finished product. But Dwayne, I have to tell you, Dwayne was dogged. He called, and I'm sorry, it was Jordan who called and said, we'd like to submit an application. And staff doesn't rank grants. We only can give advice, and the same advice to everybody. And Jordan ticked off all the boxes and came back in a second time to make sure that everything was lined up on his grant. So congratulations for doing that, Jordan. Your grant ranked very high, and we're excited to see the product and how it will impact elementary and middle school students, which was will be one of your outcomes. So that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Eileen.
I think you're muted, Eileen.
Yeah, you'd think I'd know not to mute by now. But yeah, thank you, Colleen. And today marks the fourth event in the series. We're really excited to host Jordan Rowell and Duane Peterson. Jordan is a student at the University of Vermont studying natural resources. And in the August of 2021, he kayaked the length of Lake Champlain and learned about our lake along the way. And Dwayne Peterson is a local documentary filmmaker, editor, and film programmer who partnered with Jordan to document the journey and bring the story to the screen. Together, they will share with us some of the filmmaking process, as well as sneak peeks of the film. And then we will take your questions to open up a discussion. So yeah, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dwayne and Jordan for No Other Lake.
Thank you, Eileen, and thank you all for being here tonight. Share the screen. And we're just going to dive into a presentation that we have for you tonight. First, just quick introduction. Jordan, you want to start?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Jordan Rowell, as Eileen said. Student at the University of Vermont, studying natural resources, and huge Lake Champlain fan.
And my name is Duane Peterson. Just like Eileen said, I'm a local filmmaker here in Burlington, good friend of Jordan's way back since high school. It's hard to believe, but it's been 10 years since we've been out of high school now. And we've been, we started making movies together in high school. And so it's been wonderful to reconnect over that shared interest this past summer and for this film.
Yeah, and it's awesome to be at this venue with the Lake Champlain Basin program and with the South Hero Land Trust, who were both obviously huge partners in helping make this happen. Both Guy and Executive Director Emily were big in helping connect us with folks to interview or folks to talk to get to folks to interview. And it's really cool that some of our subjects in the film are also here tonight to watch. So first thing, we just wanted to start off with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that the land that this project took place on is unceded territory of the Mohawk, Abenaki, and Mohican people. The picture on the left is of Odzi Hozo. According to the Abenaki origin story, this is the creator of Lake Champlain.
And so here we are tonight to present about our forthcoming documentary film. It's actually still in progress. So what you will see tonight, you're actually the first public audience to ever see anything from this film. We've shown it to a handful of friends, but really nobody in the public. So we're going to show you a few short clips and also just present about our process making the film. But quickly, I'd like to read this short synopsis. So motivated by a desire to better understand his home watershed, Jordan here embarks on a 2-week kayaking trip along the 120-mile length of Lake Champlain, stopping along the way to talk to a wide range of characters about the future of their shared basin. Set 50 years after the passage of the Clean Water Act, no other lake is both a celebration of the unique beauty of Lake Champlain and a confrontation with its greatest challenges. This adventure conservation documentary strives to inspire people to better connect with the natural world around them, see issues from a different point of view, and get involved with stewardship efforts happening close to home. And I promise that'll be the end of me reading from a slide tonight. But that is our synopsis, and that's our poster there. And we're very happy to be here to present about the film.
Cyanobacteria, for those who don't know, is a result of nutrient pollution, mainly phosphorus, entering the lake. And reacting with warm water conditions, often getting stirred up by storms, and existing in shallow waters like Missisquoi Bay. The phosphorus can come from a variety of sources, including agriculture, wastewater treatment plants, natural erosion processes, and all these things are at play in Missisquoi Bay. And I guess one question could be, why start the presentation there? And the answer is because that's essentially the inspiration to do this project. Lake Champlain has problems that have seen a lot of attention, but there's still a lot of work to do. And knowing that the lake it turns into that every summer made us want to do something about it. Both Dwayne and I grew up just 5 or 7 miles from the lake in Essex Junction, Vermont. Pictured here is the Burlington waterfront, which is a scene super familiar to both of us. After high school, both of us left Vermont to go explore, spent a lot of time out west, and always paying attention to environmental problems. And in the West, a lot of the water issues are usually about a lack of water. And we both would sort of talk about how, like, back in Vermont, like in the Northeast in the Lake Champlain Basin, like they've kind of got it figured out there, right? Like there's enough water, people know how to treat it, it's beautiful. We sort of always share that with people. During 2020 and the coronavirus pandemic, at its peak, we both moved back to Vermont for different reasons. I came back to go back to school to the University of Vermont, and it was there that I started to get reacquainted with the lake. The first class I took at UVM was this class all about a sense of place, learning about Vermont, and a big piece of that was about Lake Champlain. And it was in that class that I realized that there were a lot of things wrong with Lake Champlain. There was also a lot of work being done to improve humans' impact on the lake. But what I noticed most was that everyone sort of had a different perspective of what to do, of who to blame. And I realized that I wanted to learn more about it, because even though we'd both grown up so close to here, we were really kind of like strangers to the intricate problems of the lake. And for me and for Dwayne, I think learning about these problems doesn't necessarily always take place in a classroom. You know, I wanted to go out and actually, you know, see the lake firsthand and experience it. And so that's kind of where the plan was born. I was sitting in class, and I remember specifically, you know, texting Dwayne and saying, hey, we got to like learn more about Lake Champlain. Like there's a story going on here. Do you want to paddle the length of the lake? And so this, you know, line on a map was drawn. I wanted to take 2 weeks to paddle the, you know, approximately 120-mile length of the lake, and see all of the different parts of it along the way. I was going to start in Whitehall, New York at the south end, and end up in Venise, Quebec on the Canadian north end in Missisquoi Bay. Now, I had to get the right gear to do so. I don't really know anything, or I didn't know anything about kayaking. And so I had to get to work to finding a kayak, to getting a paddle, to getting all the safety gear that you see here. Because Lake Champlain, you know, it's not a great lake, but it's pretty big, and the weather conditions that are out there are the real deal, and you need to be prepared for what you're going to find. And so early on in sort of that planning and that research, I found something called the Lake Champlain Paddlers Trail, which is maintained by the Lake Champlain Committee. I found, you know, they maintain a bunch of campsites and day use areas along the length of the lake. And I also found this guidebook written by Catherine Frank and Margaret Holden, which was a huge asset in helping me plan my trip. Now, the deal is that if I was going to learn more about the lake and paddle on it, I wasn't going to do day trips and then like get in a car and go back and sleep in my apartment here in Burlington. You know, I was going to do a proper through paddle, which is where like a through hike on a trail, you pack all your gear with you, your food, your clothes, your camping gear, and I was going to pull off and camp each night. Now, the thing that means is that you have to bring a lot of gear with you, and pictured here is not just my gear, a lot of camera gear as well, but it meant that I had to find a lot of gear. I had to try to ask certain sponsors you'll see later to help out with gear because it can be expensive, and it'll end up being kind of a lot to carry. So like I said, the weather conditions is something that people, when I told experienced paddlers or when I told people about this trip, they kind of looked at me like, oh yeah, some kid who's never paddled a kayak before is going to paddle the length of the lake? Like, yeah, sure, good luck. And I'd heard stories from, you know, acquaintances about people passing away on the lake, which is a reality because as you can see in this picture here, when I did end up getting chased down by a storm, conditions can change really quick. And so since I'd never really paddled much before, I had to find some folks to teach me. So thank goodness for the Lake Champlain Kayakers Club. If any of you out there are looking to get into paddling or learn about paddling, this is a great resource. These three folks, plus the dozen or more others, helped me with gear. You know, they helped me get an extra paddle, like GPS. They helped teach me how to roll, which I never quite completely learned how, which thankfully wasn't an issue, but they taught me a lot of technical skills, not necessarily because they wanted to take the young buck under their wing, but sort of because they were scared I was going to hurt myself on the lake, and they felt personal responsibility. And so when thinking about like, if you're going to paddle length of the lake, there's a lot of questions like, well, where do you start? You know, when you want to learn more about the lake, it's like, whoa, there's so much, right? It could be overwhelming. Do you start the north, the south? For me, I just started at the top of a mountain, which is Mount Mansfield. I actually took a hike with Bill McKibben, founder of 350.org, a longtime climate activist, an author, and Bill helped give me sort of a bird's eye view of the entire basin. We went up to the top of Mount Mansfield, one of the high points in the basin, and looked at the whole length of the lake and just talked about this big picture view. And for the first time, really got to kind of see what adventure I was about to undertake. And then after talking about it and planning and getting that bird's eye view from Bill for long enough, it was finally time to set out on the journey. And so on August 8th of 2021, I put my boat in the water along with a bunch of friends and family down in Whitehall, New York, and we started paddling north. The lake changes character a lot along the length of the lake. It's narrow. It starts to get wider at the Crown Point Bridge, and there's beautiful sights along the entire length of the lake. I got super lucky to see 10 sunsets in a row on the lake, which was awesome. It was a really cool opportunity to immerse myself in this place. Living in Burlington and going down to the waterfront and looking out over the lake is you start to really get convinced that that's what Lake Champlain is. That's the extent of it, is as far as you can see in the Adirondacks in the background. But on this paddling trip, I was, really got to see a whole bunch of other sides of the lake. And for anyone that's ever been on a long distance trip before, whether that's even just a vacation, staying in one place for a while, or if it's a backpacking trip or a bike trip, you start to find yourself after a couple of days, really immersing yourself in it and realizing that your day-to-day existence, everything is the place that you're in. You start to notice the activities of the wildlife, and you just start to pay attention to the simple things around you a lot more. And so that was a really cool experience to have on, this body of water that to me was previously kind of inaccessible, far away, hard to figure out how do you even explore the lake, And once you realize that you can just paddle along the shore and go in and out of the bays and kind of see what's around the next bend, it's really quite a cool experience. But we recognized that, this wasn't just about a big adventure. We wanted to create something to share with other people.
Right. And I'll take over for a bit here, just talk about the film approach. We really wanted to kind of tell the story of this place. And so we knew that we couldn't just do that by showing Jordan on an epic adventure, paddling through this wide variety of geography and topography. We also wanted to talk to people along the way, and hear from the people living along the lake's shores and in this basin about what they saw as the greatest challenges, as well as some of the solutions that they saw for the future. So we interviewed about a dozen people along the way, in between days of kayaking, and have now edited them together into this film. And so here's a shot of Jordan picking water chestnuts. This is actually an impromptu interview, one that we hadn't scheduled. We spent months ahead of time. Jordan really did, mostly reaching out to people, figuring out who we should talk to. This one, we actually just stumbled into this VYCC team pulling out invasive species near Benson Landing, Vermont. This is a scene early on in the film of Jordan pulling water chestnuts. And this scene itself wouldn't have been possible without actually with having a camera on the water. So it's really important to us to have this small dinghy. We had I think it was 12-foot inflatable boat, yeah, with a 4-horsepower motor on it. And that was the main film vessel. Is just enough to keep up with Jordan, but really kind of immerse ourselves as a film crew with his story and with the lake itself. So we really couldn't have, I think, told the story without it, and so that was a huge part of it.
Yeah, because when I told you, I texted Dwayne, hey, do you want to make a movie? Let's paddle length the lake. I had in mind that we would both be in the same boat and we'd be paddling together. And Dwayne immediately replied, the filmmaker and, imagery, visual thinker he is, and was like, well, that's just going to be a movie of a camera at the back of your head the whole time because I'm going to be in the canoe. And that was the moment I realized of what it really takes to make a movie is thinking about that
There
stuff.
were a few moments there where we really kind of realized what it takes to make a movie. That was one of them. But again, so here's kind of the reverse angle. We had a GoPro on Jordan's boat for a lot of it. And here I am with our filmmaking partner, our second camera operator and drone pilot there, Ryan Malley, who was there on more than half of the shoots. He was also very helpful. This is our full rig with Jordan's kayak on top, the film boat in the back, and even his partner Haley's kayak in the back, who saw us off on the very first day. This, I think, was taken the very first morning of the production.
Yeah. And it just, thinking about this and like having all this gear made me remember that we, like, some people who were trying to follow this trip might, understand this, that we sort of had, we had a plan. We had certain scheduled dates that we were going to meet up with people, these scheduled interviews, but certain interviews and certain experiences we had were just happened serendipitously. And the last interview with Andrew was one of those.
Right.
He had called me during the trip and said, like, hey, I saw your Instagram, because he goes to UVM as well. And he's like, hey, I love paddling. Like, you want to meet up? And it just sort of like a reminder that we had, like, we were pretty much just like this caravan and had all this gear, and we were out in the lake, and we were like, who wants to talk? Like who wants to like share with us their perspective of the lake? And we were just trying to be open to that and open to that experience, while also trying to manage like being like, we got to make it to, talk to somebody in a week. Like, we got to stay on schedule. So it was a funny experience, but having all this gear was like, made it like very nimble.
Right.
I think Dwayne had to put this boat on the trailer by himself multiple times.
Yeah. It was my first time ever operating a motor boat of any kind. I had to get a boating license, which was a great experience. It was quite the way to spend a couple weeks in the summer. Okay, here. So I guess we have just a few shots of behind the scenes. Here I am standing on the in this inflatable boat with a GoPro and the end of a painter's pole, really kind of pulling out all of the different tools in our tool. I don't think we ended up using this shot, but we were definitely out there experimenting, trying to get as many different kinds of shots as possible, to try to tell the story, right?
Right. Because why do we have to do that as opposed to just like shooting from the shore? Which is why I was like, just like run along shore and film me, right?
Yeah, Jordan's original conception of this project was much more logistically simple than it ended up being. It was a lot of work to follow him. I camped with him a few times, but a lot of times I was going out to meet him, follow him to and from an interview. So here, I think this is just north of the Crown Point Bridge. His partner Haley operating the boat at this time, although other times I was operating it and filming. It's kind of a one-person crew. What else do we have? This is a spot where we pulled off. Right, actually, this is where we filmed the images of the Palisades there at Split Rock that you just saw in the middle clip that we showed those huge cliffs that Jordan's paddling under. Ryan took some fun photos on 35 millimeters. Is one of them. Here is Ryan and I think this is back in May, actually, before the trip when we went up Mount Mansfield with Bill McKibben, and that was quite the experience as well. He is a very fast hiker. I don't know how else to put it, but that was I feel like we basically ran up that mountain with all of our gear. That was one of the hardest shoots I feel like I've ever done in my life, to be honest. But yeah, that was quite the way to start off the trip. I think this is the very first thing we shot for it.
Yeah, imagine going on a hike and having someone run after you and run 100 feet ahead and film you walking past, and then despite you asking them, hey, you want to hang on there for a second so we can get ahead? Nope, they keep on hiking, and you got to run up past them to get the shot. That's what these two guys did, and it was an exhausting day.
We were up Mansfield in like an hour and 10 minutes or something.
I think, talk to the Green Mountain Club. I think we set a record.
Definitely a record with 2 cameras. Here's just another still Jordan paddling. I don't know if there's more to.
Well, this just made me think about like you said, it was important to get all angles of the lake, like
right.
talking to as many different people as we could from different geographic regions, from different life experiences, from different professions, and also seeing the lake from, above the water and below the water.
Right.
And so I don't know if this one was the GoPro on the painter's pole or if this was Dwayne in the water.
I'm in the water for this one, yeah.
But it was like day 2 and, it's like 8 o'clock in the morning and Dwayne's like, getting his swimsuit on. He's like, all right, get in your boat. I'm going to jump in the water and film you. And yeah, I don't know. I guess that's what it took for some of these. And the shots came out pretty cool to be able to get, underwater and above water in the same frame.
What else do we have here?
And so some of these experiences, this is with the St. Michael's College group after the trip, trying to figure out how people can get involved on like an individual level and do something. Because, after the trip on the lake and sort of experiencing some of the blooms and invasive species, and just like set under this world of like a changing climate is kind of intimidating and just overwhelming to figure out like how to get involved. And so we wanted to go and like try our hand at doing something and see how it would feel to actually kind of give back to this place and hopefully share that with others. And filming this was, its own challenge because it kind of required Dwayne to be like, typically on an interview shoot, you'd like 2 cameras, but an experience like last minute, joining another group, we just had the one. And so Dwayne kind of had to play the role of, capturing everything in like an hour and a half tree planting, with this camera running the whole time. And I think it turned out really well. We had some really good conversations that day.
Yeah. What else do we have here? Okay, I think we're nearing the end of our slideshow. This is our kind of main crew. Jordan, of course, in the center, me there on the left, and our good friend Ryan on the right. This is at the top of Split Rock Mountain in New York.
And as you can see, behind my left leg is Veery, the dog, who joined us.
Wonder dog.
Who joined us for that hike too, which was a really good day. And don't be fooled. We look like relaxed and rested, but this was also at the end of a very long day, a really good adventure, because something that I learned early on in the trip about the Lake Champlain Basin is how much land drains into the lake. It's at a ratio, much higher than that of even the Great Lakes. So if you think about any activity happening on land as far away as Mount Mansfield, as far away as the high peaks of the Adirondacks, that's all ending up in the water of the lake. And so we realized that if we were going to tell the story of the entire, Lake Champlain, that we had to move onto land as well. And again, logistically in my head, it seemed like pretty reasonable. And then in reality, it required sort of like a 10-hour day of hiking 8 miles from.
Well, actually, I think this is the Otter Creek, right? We put in the boat. I think that's what this is. We put the boat in at like 5 a.m. across the lake and motored across in that little dinghy at like sunrise, Ryan and I, to meet Jordan at Split Rock the day that we shot this interview. That was maybe the second hardest shoot of my life, honestly. We hiked like 8 miles this day again with all of our gear. Some of the worst mosquitoes I remember as well, recent memory.
Yeah, so this
but yeah.
But all worth it to get this really cool view up on the Split Rock Wildway looking down.
Yeah, amazing spot. One of the most beautiful places on the lake, in my opinion.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us to, why are we doing this and what do we hope to get out of it? I guess, I usually try to say this earlier on, but like we both sort of acknowledge that we're not experts on Lake Champlain and its problems. We're still pretty new to trying to be involved in this work. But that was sort of the whole point, is to be like, well, how do you get involved and what does that look like? And, we just sort of wanted to capture the story of like what it looks like to learn more about the place you call home and learn about, what it looks like to have a healthy relationship with that place in the long term. And while a movie isn't going to magically make, Missisquoi Bay clear water again, we're hoping that it can accomplish a couple of things that will ultimately help in the long-term health of the lake. And one of those things, starting with this left image, is just inspire people to get out on Lake Champlain more. Again, I keep using this example of like standing out on the Burlington waterfront, looking out and being like, oh yeah, that's the lake. I can sort of see all of it. And you sort of wonder how you can even explore that, right? Like you can see everything. You're like, what do? I paddle out in the middle and then paddle back. But it's really surprising, like the variety and the detailed adventures that you can have just following shorelines and how much it changes. And we want to, hopefully, get people to have adventures on Lake Champlain, because I didn't see that many people out there on human powered vessels. I maybe ran into maybe a dozen and a half people during the whole 2 weeks. And it's a big lake, and there's definitely room for a lot more of us to be out there.
We want to inspire people to get out there and get to know this place or the place that they call home, to just start building deeper connections with the natural world around you. And I think recreation is a great way to do that.
The second thing that we hope is represented in this middle picture, which is just to hear things from and consider other people's perspectives. Early on in thinking about this trip, it was like, I thought I knew a lot about the lake just because of where I grew up and where the people I learned from and the experiences I had, but that's very different from other people across the basin. And so I think that we're going to solve a lot of these problems and build a better relationship with the lake together. And so I think challenging ourselves to consider another point of view that maybe we don't normally agree with or hear as much is going to be a part of this. And hopefully by, even though everyone who watches the film doesn't have these conversations that I got to have, hopefully by watching the film, they can feel as though they were on that adventure and that they were, a part of these conversations and have that experience, by proxy. And the third goal of this is just to encourage people to become more active stewards of Lake Champlain or the place that they call home. This picture of a little seedling, it just sort of represents the small things that every one of us can do to make a positive impact. And honestly, it was one of the most fun days of the trip to get to plant trees. And it's really a cool experience. And we hope that, if everyone can sort of recognize that this is our lake together and we share this place and we all have responsibility towards protecting it, that we can all be stewards, that we'll be much better off for it.
So I think that's that. Oh, yep. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. These are some. Yeah. Go ahead. These are some of our sponsors.
Yeah. So we'd just like to say thank you so much to Lake Champlain Basin Program, NEI, WPCC, our fiscal sponsor, the Grand Isle County Natural Resource Conservation District, University of Vermont, the John M. Bassell Foundation, all for supporting this project, as well as the NRS and Warner Paddles for helping supply some of our gear.
All right, so finally, once again, this film is called No Other Lake. It is still technically a work in progress. Again, you all are the first ones to get any sort of glimpse at it. So I'm very happy to have shared this with you tonight. The film itself will be about 40 to 45 minutes long. And we are actually hosting a screening at the Worthen Library in about a little over a month from now, April 27th. And so we hope you'll join us for that.
Yeah, and I guess before we move on to some of the Q&A, and hopefully, maybe folks have questions, I guess the first question I have for you all is, are you following us on Instagram? All right, that's all we got for now. Thanks so much, and we'll hand it back over to you, Eileen and Guy, to field some questions.
thank you both so much. That was really awesome to see the footage of the film. I'm really excited to see the whole thing. So yeah, we've allotted some time for Q&A, about 15 minutes. Please submit your questions in the chat feature. You can direct them to either everyone or to Guy McGuire or myself, and then I'll read them off to Jordan and Dwayne, just for the purpose of the recording, so we can hear what they're answering.
Maybe to give people a couple minutes to think about questions. I just had one question. It was cool to hear from Colleen about some of your guys' plans afterwards and the use of this for educational purposes. And so I was curious to hear more of kind of like what you all were thinking about in terms of using this as an educational tool with students in the area. I think that's a really awesome idea, and I just was curious to hear more about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So getting this in front of youth of the next generation, I think, is our kind of top priority. We want this. I think there have been a lot of fantastic films made about Lake Champlain, very, very informative educational films. We're hoping to build on that kind of tradition with this and bringing this adventure to it, and really trying to inspire, show people that there is adventure out there to have, and there is a good time to be had, and an amazing lake to get to know. So a big part of our distribution plan is to make it available for schools, to do school screenings, but also just to make it available as an educational tool. We're going to put together a classroom guide to help educators engage students about the issues faced in the film, as well as how they can get involved.
I think it's a really cool opportunity to, have educators out there who are already doing, water quality and environmental subjects in their classrooms, to like take an example of something a little bit more tangible, an adventure happening close to home, to include in their curriculum as sort of a connection, conduit between like this, more hard skill, like academic subject matter, and apply it to like this more active, citizen involvement thing. So if there are any educators or teachers in the audience, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're developing a list of folks to make sure to direct send the film to when it's complete. We're open to the possibility of doing more screenings in classrooms and presentations. We want to see more kids kayaking out in the lake and become involved in the stewardship of this place.
There was a question, Eileen. Pierre asked if you could ask a question verbally.
Yeah, I just let him know that he could ask it, but Pierre, if you can hear me, you can ask your question.
I was just waiting for you. Okay. Well, it's a big comment. I was fortunate to meet Jordan and Dwayne during that trip, and we saw some of the filmography tonight, and I can't wait to see the final product, because I didn't see that. I haven't seen that when I met them, but I see it's going to be great. But what I have heard when I met them is the rhetoric, the discourse, the questions that Jordan had. And I told everybody around me after the interview, I said, well, this guy knows exactly what he wants, what the goal is, and he's asking the right question. He's really smart, and this is going to be great. I can't wait to see the film. So I have two questions. A very practical question: when will the film be available with French subtitles so we can show it in Quebec to our folks here? I will be very interested. And second question, I've done a few long hikes in my life in the Alps, and like 2 weeks with the backpack. And like you said, you really get immersed in the environment. And I was wondering, how did you get back to the real life after that? And how did you feel after those 2 weeks of immersion?
Well, I'll answer the first question first. We are putting on a premiere of the film on April 21st, just about a week before the South Euro screening, and we'll have French subtitles available shortly after. That's a big part of our plan, is to make it accessible in Quebec.
Okay, June 20th, we have our annual grand meeting in around the Missisquoi Bay. So if you can have it for there, maybe I can find you some time on our meeting.
Absolutely, we will for sure have them by then.
Okay, thanks.
And then, yeah, how did we adjust? It was a big undertaking, and I for one was tired at the end, and I didn't even paddle.
Yeah, I mean, the answer, I guess, necessity. The start of the semester, I was like training to be a TA in the class that inspired me to take the trip, the following week after finishing. So I don't know. I never quite got out of my head, I guess. We just went right in, and I won't give away too much, but there, the film continued even beyond the trip and into that next semester of coming full circle and teaching or helping TA that class. So I don't know. I never look at Lake Champlain the same way now. I definitely, every time I go down there, I sort of whimsically think about the adventure and all the places we missed, because we didn't touch every square foot of that lake. There's still a lot more to explore. So I'm still not over it.
So Will
Thank
Suter
you.
asks, what's the next kayak journey going to be?
Yeah, it's a good question. The next kayak journey. Well, the journey that has to do with kayaking, I guess, that like takes place after this is figuring out a way. I mentioned early on the Lake Champlain Paddlers Trail is an awesome resource. And if I was to sort of take one thing from this trip is wanting to see that continued to be supported. And, at least for me personally, there's so many organizations and so many people that deserve to have their work continued, but like my personal connection with the place is I would love to see that Paddlers Trail continue to be used and developed, and so maybe that's the next journey on Lake Champlain.
Awesome. So I'm actually curious. So you talked about how you were kind of surprised about, like, when you go to the waterfront in Burlington, you see the lake, and that's kind of your conception of the lake is just what you see in front of you. And you were sort of surprised about the scale of the lake beyond what you can just see at the Burlington waterfront. I'm wondering also if there were other things along the way that surprised you that you weren't really prepared to going into it.
If there was anything that surprised us on the trip. I think that one thing that stands out to me, the first thing that comes to mind is like the difference in developed shoreline on the lake. When you're driving along the lake on its shores, it's hard to it's a really unique vantage point to be sitting on the lake looking at the shores. Like, it's very intimate with the shorelines. In a lot of places, you can't even really see much beyond that. And so it really stands out. Like, is the shoreline a wetland? Is the shoreline a forest? Or is it developed? And it changes along the lake. The South Lake is is not as developed. There's a lot of wetlands. Like, if you can't really just pull your boat up on the shore anywhere on the southern end of the lake, because it's all wetland and sensitive habitat, and there's just no dry ground to get out. But then as you move north, especially once you start getting into like the Chittenden County side or up near Plattsburgh, you really start to see a lot more developed shoreline. And while I would love to have a home on the lake, it's also sort of a bummer when you're paddling on the lake and you want to get out and it's all private property on the shoreline. And so that just surprised me, because it's like, yeah, very different. And it changes, and it's definitely surprises you to be like, holy moly, where did all these buildings come from?
I'd say I was most surprised looking back, and maybe I didn't realize this in the moment, but just the wealth of information that people in this basin are holding, and the generosity of so many people in this project to share it with us, and for this film. I'm so grateful to all the people that we met along the way, and surprised, honestly, at the degree to which they opened up to us and brought us into their worlds and their way of seeing the lake. It was nothing really could have prepared me for the variety of perspectives that we saw.
All right, so Jennifer Hill asks if is there a resource guide for the next steps to protect the lake?
Yes, that will be part of our classroom discussion guide, as well as our press kit that we'll be sending out to try to drum up some media for this, but also, yeah, the tools that we will give to educators will include that kind of stuff. That's all information that, that's not stuff that we're making. We'll be pulling that from lots of other organizations that are doing that work and have that data available.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum or the Lake Champlain Basin program, or I mean, gosh, who else is in here? The South Huron Land Trust, the Citizens Advisory Committee of Lake Champlain, the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network. There's so many organizations that have just a wealth of information. I mean, everything we learned about the lake either came from the people we talked to or just as likely the websites of these organizations. And we'll make sure to include those resources we use in our materials, like Dwayne said, because there's so much out there, and we didn't want to invent anything new necessarily. We just wanted to help promote sort of a lot of the work that's been done and share that in a new way.
Right, so Colleen from Lake Champlain Basin program asks, will you suggest ways for people to explore the lake from the water, such as Community Sailing Center in Burlington, checking out free demos offered by the kayak and canoe businesses, canoe rental at state parks for the Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuges, etc.?
Yes, yes, that's a great idea. We are, like I said earlier, hosting a premiere next month on the 21st, and we'll be soliciting donations that will be used directly for increasing access and providing up, supporting those who are providing opportunities for people to get out on the lake, and hope to have some of those organizations in attendance at that screening as well.
Judy Stacy asks, did you discover any novel cleanup efforts while paddling?
Yeah, so in the south part of the lake, the invasive species, including water chestnut, is a big problem down there. And as you saw in some of the photos, and as you'll see in the film, hand pulling these essentially aquatic weeds is sort of the number one method going to remove them. But practically side by side with these youth crews pulling these invasive species by hand are also these massive harvesters, diesel machines that are churning up mechanically invasive species. And I think it was just like such a contrast to see these two methods practically side by side trying to solve this same problem. And they were kind of collaborating, they were communicating, they knew each other, and so that was really that was cool to see.
Elizabeth Lee asks if you have a mailing list.
That's a great question. The answer is no right now, although and we could potentially start. We have a website, lakechamplainfilm.com, and on Instagram, Lake Champlain Film is where we'll be posting most of our updates. Mailing list, not a bad idea though. We'll have some updates in the next few months that, so for now, the website and the Instagram are best places to keep in touch.
If you are someone out there with a mailing list and you would like to share the project in your mailing list, then that would be awesome. And we would love to be a part of it.
All right, so Ryan Mitchell asks, can you talk now a little bit about how we can make it easier for people to get involved in stewardship?
Oh, yeah. So that question, I will say, a really good question. And it also makes me feel a little bit like, I don't know. I don't want to say that I don't know, either of us knows the perfect answer for that. Cause like I said, we're still sort of new to this world and just trying to like be participants ourselves. You know, like this whole film is us trying to kind of figure out that answer too. I will say that some of the things we picked up along the way and like the mission of this film is by connecting people with this place early. And that's why getting this film in front of young people is important, because I think if you have an established sense of place early on, that you'll be more likely to take care of it. Another way that Andrew Romano from POCO briefly mentions is this idea of differential access for different lived experiences. That conversation, you can look at it through a lens that Vermont and New York, this part of the country being a largely white state, it excludes people from not just outdoor recreation, but from environmentalism and environmental work too. And that's something that I'm still trying to learn more about and get better at. And hearing that perspective, I think was like a real reminder that there's like a lot of different barriers in the way to people becoming better stewards. And that's another reason why we wanted to just talk to as many people as we could to hear as many of those different stories and try to, all work together.
Thank you for that. I do have one more question. I am wondering, throughout your journey, what your interactions were with like South Hero and with Grand Isle County. Like, did you stop off in the islands at all? And if so, what was that like for you?
Yeah, the Champlain Islands is awesome. It's a wonderful place. I took advantage of many campsites in South Hero and Champlain Islands region. I stayed at Night Island all by myself. We didn't film there that night, so it's sort of something that I sort of like my own little secret that I get to keep that won't be shared with the world. But it's an awesome place. Yeah, where else? Heroes Welcome, which I guess is North Hero, so not South Hero. So I don't know if you have a competition going, but Heroes Welcome is like, if you've ever heard of like trail magic, like, people leaving treats along the side of a trail or something, like nobody gave me a free muffin at Heroes Welcome, but like pulling up in your kayak and just having this store filled with goodies. Like I spent like 3 hours hanging out outside of Heroes Welcome, waiting for the weather to calm down. It was awesome. Oh gosh, yeah. Where else did we stopped? I think it's South here at one point, near like across the bridge from the Sandbar, and there's a little shop deli there that was really nice to visit. Really cool community, really welcoming people. Yeah, I think it's like people often forget because they're connected by bridges that they're, are in fact islands, but it's a really unique character of a place in the Champlain Islands. And like, you can really feel it. It's a wonderful time there.
Awesome. Thank you for humouring my questions. And we're a little bit past 8 now, so I think that we're good to wrap things up for the evening. I'll be sending up a follow-up email with links to a lot of the things that we talked about during the Q&A and resources for stewardship of the lake, and also more information about the screening of the film at the Worthen Library on the 27th of April. So our next Winter Wednesday event will be in 2 weeks, and we'll be hosting a panel of professionals who incorporate climate change into their work, and we're going to discuss global issues and local responses. This should be a really interesting discussion on climate change and community, and we hope to see you all there as well. And more info on that will be found on shlt.org on our events page. Thank you so much to Dwayne and to Jordan for this awesome presentation. And thank you to Colleen of Lake Champlain Basin Program for sharing some more information about that. And yeah, look for the follow-up email tomorrow and enjoy the rest of your evenings, everybody. Good night.
Thank you all for joining us. Hope to see you next month.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye and congratulations again. Bye.
Thanks, Pierre.